The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised.
Let's ride, heading up 35. One way, we're headed at 90K. Over the two-lane causeway. We'll go left, it's gonna be a classy day. Kickstands down, head on over to the band stage. Kick back and listen to the band play. Whoa, let's take a ride today. Whoa, across the causeway. An HD rockin' day. The classy chassis way.
Good evening and welcome to this House of Musicians with your host, singer, songwriter, and founder of the band, Inner City Outlaws, the Baritone Bear, Barry Smith, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board right now, send us an email. Our email addresses are thishouseofmusicians@gmail.com or instudio101@gmail.com.
An HD rockin' day. The classy chassis way.
And now, the man who always will give you some free advice about roofing, Mr. Barry Smith.
Hey, welcome, good listeners, to this House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101. We hope you enjoy the next hour with us as we do our small part to help promote musicians, bands, and venues. Gary, how are you?
How are you, sir?
Do you need a roof repaired?
No,
That's
not
why you were saying that. I promise it'll be cheap.
I know, and you are the roofer in this area. Everyone I hear from, I have to be straight about it, is they say, man, is this guy good? So, but I don't need one right now, so thank you, though.
Oh, well, you're quite welcome. Gary, I'm stoked, man. Tonight I have a singer-songwriter, regular Joe, singer-songwriter, great singer on the show, goes to work every day, doesn't have a record contract, hasn't done any big touring, no big concerts, but man, he's got some songs on Spotify, and can this guy sing and write songs? Please, everybody, welcome Chris O'Neill. Chris, how are you this evening?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good, buddy, and it's an honor to have you on the show. I have listened to your music on Spotify and went, wow, why is this guy not a huge success? And it's never too late, and you just, a lot of it's luck, and you have to be in the right time, the right place at the right time. But man, you have some good music, which we're going to share with the listeners here this evening. Chris, let's start right at the beginning, my man. Tell me how you were introduced to music when you were younger, and let's start right there.
Sure. Well, you had my dad on a couple of weeks ago, and I'd say that's probably it. My earliest memories would be just them playing records, my mom and dad playing records. There was always guitars kicking around. Just don't remember a time where there wasn't really music in the house. Even now, I mean, I bought a Martin D28 acoustic guitar because my dad had an old Yamaha that I still remember from being, 5 or 6 years old. So, yeah, that would be that's how I got into it.
Yeah, man. So let's let everyone know who your dad is. Very famous rock star, Mike O'Neill from the band Wednesday. Back in the day, they had numerous hits. So that's who we're talking about, Mike O'Neill, who, like you say, was also on the show. And what a treat Mike is. Fabulous guy, great musician, and we often text and talk to each other. So there you go. So here you are now. When you're introduced to music because it was always around the house. When did you pick up your first guitar and decide I want to learn how to play?
It's interesting. You'd think it would be earlier than it was. I think I was about 14, but I'd always wondered about songwriting before that. Sort of hearing the songs in the house was, where did they come from? And my dad never sort of said, you need to play guitar or anything like that. I just picked it up one day and said, hey, can you show me how to play this? And he never really gave me lessons. He kind of just showed me a couple chords. I think the first two songs I learned were Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix and Free Fallin' by Tom Petty.
Sure.
And then I think he had good advice, which was, find some friends that also play and you can learn stuff through them, which I thought was really good advice in hindsight, because you kind of learn the contemporary songs of the day. At that point would have been in the 90s, right? So, and then your friends, you kind of learn from your friends and you get better with each other.
You absolutely do. And so what kind of music were you listening to when you were young?
I started off with, I liked a lot of the stuff that was out around the time, like the Tom Petty Full Moon Fever album, and Tom Cochrane Red Rider was pretty big too before I started playing guitar. And then I think Nirvana was pretty big, but they were just kind of ending when I really got into it. But the band that made me really want to write songs and show that the kinds of songs that they wrote was Oasis, for sure. Just hearing them, they were very different than the grunge. They used open chords. They just had a really good swagger and attitude. They kind of blended all the classic rock elements of stuff that we all love, like the Beatles and the Stones. And I just thought they were just amazing. And that's kind of what got me really inspired to write songs and to play them in bands. So.
Sure. And what did you think when you were younger or as a kid, when your dad was always playing?
Well, yeah, it was great. He would do fundraisers. Actually, the earliest I remember, he brought his guitar into my nursery school when I was about 4, and I have a memory of him playing to a bunch of 4-year-olds, and then later on. Oh, actually, no. Before that, my earliest memory, I mentioned this, the now closed Tartan Tavern,
cool,
which is kind of near where I grew up, and I have my earliest memory potentially is my mom carrying me into the bar when my dad played there. And you've been to the Tartan, I'm sure, and there's that back room that is really small, but at the time, like when I picture it, it's really, really big because I can still smell the cigarette smoke, and I still remember that exact feeling. So, he mostly did that. He kind of played around the house, and he played some, fundraisers for hockey tournaments or hockey teams, I should say. And then he kind of, I don't know, he's always been playing. He's always got a band going, and as you know, he's the ultimate showman. So.
For sure. No, that's awesome. And so now, do you remember what the first song you learned how to play was on the guitar, or even sing?
Yeah. So I think, Purple Haze a bit, and then Free Falling for sure was the first one I learned how to play start to finish, because it's, the total of the 2 chords. So.
Yeah, I think it's D and G, isn't it?
I think, like an F and C, and then there's like a suspend there or something. So.
Yeah, there you go. So Free Falling, awesome. Now, what about the first time you played live? Were you nervous?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I think the first time I played live was actually at a school, and I think that was the first time. It was at St. Joseph's School, and the guy who was playing with me is actually a very, very successful strength and conditioning coach in the NHL named Ryan Van Asten, but he was on my flank. And we played a bunch of Neil Young, Smashing Pumpkins, Foo Fighters songs, I think. And I think we were about 14, something like that. And I was very nervous.
I bet you were. But then, of course, like I find when you come out on the stage and it's just the first song, once you get through a song or two and the audience is on your side by clapping and you don't get beer bottles thrown at you, then usually you kind of calm down after that and get into it. That's what I find.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Now, how old were you when you wrote your first song? Because I just want the folks out there to know what a great songwriter you are. And like I say, we're going to share some of your songwriting this evening by spinning a couple of your tunes with the audience. But what was my question? Yeah, how old were you when you wrote your first song?
Well, thank you for that, by the way. It was probably right after I started playing guitar. It wouldn't have been much longer. I would have been about 15. And I remember it was called Time, and I was inspired to write it like the structure by a song called English Bay off of Blue Rodeo's 5 Days in July, which ironically enough is the vibe I was going for one of the songs you're going to play tonight. That 5 Days in July album by Blue Rodeo is just fantastic. So
yeah, no kidding. We've had Basil Donovan on the show twice from Blue Rodeo. What a fabulous band they are. What a great bass player. So you're definitely, being inspired by some fabulous musicians in that area. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Incredible.
So now, what about now? Did you ever play? The first time you said you played was in school.
We mean as a band? I did a bunch of gigs in high school. I was in a band. My first actual band was with a guy one of the guys in the band was named Wayne Petty, and he's actually the frontman for Cuff the Duke, and he's just a phenomenal musician and writer as well. And we started that band in grade 9, and we pretty much played Nirvana covers very poorly. And then I was in a few other bands. I was in another band with one of, if not the best bass player I've ever played with, a guy called Matt Ibbett. We were in a band called Fahrenheit 7 or something like that. But we were actually pretty good for being a 16, 17-year-old kids at the time. And then, and then it was off to university. And then I played at the university bar, Father and Sons, which is mentioned in one of the songs you're going to play tonight. I played there for 4 years, almost every Saturday. So.
Well, there you go. Look how successful you've been as far as like Mike. I'm sure Mike is very proud. You have a very successful career, and you write great songs, and you're like, I keep saying it over and over because I just think it's so good. And you're such a good singer. What is, now, can you play any other instruments besides the guitar?
Yeah. I mean, I can fake my way through most of it. I can, all the stuff that you hear on the records, with the exception of some piano that my friend Evan Candido does. Yeah. There's the song I have, Harbor. There's a guy called Jules LaPrairie who also plays bass on that. But for the most part, I play all of them, and that's not to take credit for it. That's so to understand that. That's why they're probably not professional grade, I would say, performance.
Call it what you will. I think it's professional grade. I think it's fabulous. I've been around music all my life, and that's why you're on the show, my friend. I just think that this is some real worthwhile listening and great songwriting. So now, out of all the songs that you have, which is your favorite one to play?
That's a good question. I think Last Call, one of the songs you're going to play tonight, is one of my favorites for sure. That was one that, I don't know, just came together quickly. It's got that combination of a good pace, good lyrics. I like singing it. There's a harmonica solo in it. So.
Absolutely. Now, online, you go by the penny auction. So I want people out there, the listener, to go to the penny auction. Again, that's the penny auction, and that's Chris O'Neill and his stuff, all his music online. Spotify, of course, you have 10 songs on there. I'm not sure. I know with my music, I have it like on 165 sites. So I know if you go with DistroKid, you could have it distributed to a whole bunch of like iTunes and Apple Music and Spotify. Is yours only on Spotify, or is it on a bunch of other music sites as well?
Yeah, so it's all. I use CD Baby, so it's actually on everything. I am starting to put things out under my own name, my full name, Christopher O'Neill now. I have an EP that I put out a long time ago that's mostly just demos, and then I have another one coming out in March. But in between is the penny auction. So there are 2 penny auction albums. I think a total of 20 or 21 songs or something like that, and then. There's a song I just put out last week called Harbor under my own name. So, yeah, short answer to your question is yes, it should be on everything anyway. It should be on all those sites. Wherever you get your music, I'm hoping it's there.
Awesome. And so now, would you have two separate accounts that people would go to, Chris O'Neill and the Penny Auction, or are you going to take the music from the Penny Auction eventually and put it all under Chris O'Neill? Is that something separate that you're doing for a reason, or?
That's a really good idea. So maybe I'll try to do that eventually. No,
Yeah.
I did the Penny Auction thing because I was kind of content to. It's one of those weird things where I was trying to find the balance between getting my songs out there without trying to put too much spotlight on me, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But now I'm getting a little more comfortable with the idea of, okay, you know what? I'm a songwriter and here are the songs and I hope you like them.
Yeah, definitely. And it gets your name out there. I know that you've had some success with songwriting, which we're going to touch on here shortly.
Mm-hmm.
But first, why don't we go ahead and play one of your songs so we can let the listener hear how great this stuff is. Let's play Last Call, and then we'll come back. I think you talked a little bit about Last Call, but let's talk about it a little more. When you wrote it, why you wrote it, and then I want to ask you what your what your creative writing process is. But let's play, folks. I have Christopher O'Neill on the show this evening. You can find his music under the Penny Auction right now. And hopefully you're going to transfer it all over to Chris O'Neill eventually, Chris. But this is a song Chris wrote called Last Call, right here on this House of Musicians on Reality Radio 101.
A young man, I was out on the run. I was a glorified version of a workman's son. I had a talking, had a cigarette. I had nothing in my pocket, it was all in my head. Alright. Now it's the weekend, so let's hit father and sons, and we can go out on the town until the morning comes. We'll take on York Street, maybe wait out the sun, or hit the tap across the river on a midnight run. Alright. And I remember you at the end of summer, feeling the rain and the sound of thunder. Those were the days and nights of wonder. Now I'm older and I'm feeling the change. Yeah, the days are getting heavy and I'm feeling the weight. And at the crossroads under a Queensland sky, from half a world away I said a long goodbye. Alright. Cause I remember you at the end of summer, feeling the rain and the sound of thunder. Those were the days and nights of wonder. Summer, feeling the rain and the sound of thunder. Those were the days and nights of wonder. Yeah, those were the days and nights of wonder. Now I'm an old man, I'm still a workman's son. I got nowhere left to run and nothing to run from. And it's the weekend, but it's a young man's game. So I'd stay for last call, but it's getting late. I'd stay for last call, but it's getting late.
Hey folks, welcome back to this House of Musicians radio show. I have the amazing Chris O'Neill on the show this evening. We just heard his song that he wrote called Last Call. Chris, great song. Let's talk about where that song came from.
Well, thank you. It's a pretty autobiographical song, I think. It's one of the reasons I like it. It kind of goes into a few phases of my life, I think, which is kind of which I think I summed up pretty well. I'm pretty proud of how I summed that up, I guess, is the answer why I like it so much. But listening to it, there's still things I would change about it. But
Well, isn't that the way with all of our songs that we write? There's always something we wish we did differently. But one thing I find that we are our own worst critics, and but the people out there don't know that. They hear a good song and they like a good song, so that's basically what that's all about, as far as I'm concerned. When did you write Last Call?
I wrote it a few years ago. So I've been around for a little while, so I do have a wife and family, and it was kind of about that transition, I think. And it kind of goes through those transitions. The first verse is sort of those hell-raising days as a teen running around Oshawa. The second verse kind of alludes to my days in Ottawa. I mentioned Father and Sons, which is the bar that I told you I played at. And then, the chorus part is really just kind of looking back at everything and all the people that have been a part of my journey. And then that sort of, what's the next verse? Oh yeah, the next verse is sort of about my year in Australia, where it's this kind of thing where I left and everybody was young, and then I came back only a year later, and it seemed like everybody was getting jobs, and I was getting jobs who were moving away. So that last part there, the last verse, I ended on a verse because I wanted the contrast between the first and the last, which the term "last call" is obviously from the last line, where I sort of say, what did I say? It's a young man's game, but I'd stay for last call, but it's getting late. So I name check a few things. There's a few inside language, I guess, not jokes necessarily, but things like the dep, for example. When I went to school in Ottawa, the idea of, hit the dep across the river on a midnight run was when the LCBO would close in Ottawa. You'd go across the bridge to a dépanneur, which is like a convenience store in Quebec, and they closed your booze until 1 or 2 in the morning. So, if the LCBO closed and you ran out of booze, you could take a cab over just across the bridge, and you get on the midnight run, you would get that. So that last verse is just, I got nowhere left to run, nothing to run from. And it's a young man's game, so I'd stay for last call, but it's getting late. It's just the idea that those days are done now. So, and I'm okay with it. So that's kind of what I like about the song. It kind of goes over all of that territory, which was the aim.
Absolutely. And we all have our fiery, wild days when we're young, doing stuff like going across the bridge to get booze at 12:30 because there's nothing open in Ottawa, partying all night, amongst other things. And then, of course, we settle down, get married, have kids, and like myself, and things kind of change. You kind of settle down a little bit.
Yeah, and they should.
And they should. I took a little longer, but that's okay. Yeah. So I got a couple emails here, Chris, that I want to read to you. This one's from Carol. It says, "Hello all, new listener here from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Very interesting and entertaining show. Please keep up the good work." Thank you for that, Carol. This one's for Mike, and this one's for Chris, and this is from Liam. "Hi, Barry. I'm a big fan of Chris O'Neill's dad, and now I'm a big fan of Chris." Nice.
Thank you. Very nice.
Here's one from Joe. "Hey, what was the inspiration for Breaking Hearts?" Let's not answer that yet because I want to first talk about, Joe, we'll get to that soon here, but I want to go into your songwriting because you've had some success with your songwriting, Chris. So now I know that you, over the past few years, you've written songs with the likes of Tennille Townes.
I have, yes.
Let's start there. How did that happen? I know there's a few names here: Jerry Sarita, Troy Coco, Leaving Thomas, Haley Jensen. I know you did really good with Haley Jensen with your songwriting. Let's start with Tennille Townes. How did that all come to be?
Well, actually, to start, you can't really start with Tennille Townes because you have to start with Troy Coco. So Troy Coco is not just one of the best songwriters, but one of the best people I've met out here. He's one of the only people who's, he saw me play. We have this group in Calgary called the Calgary Songsmiths, which is just an amazing group for any songwriter. If you're in Calgary or in Alberta, or actually right now they're doing a lot of online stuff. So even if you're anywhere, you want to join that group on Facebook, you really should. It's run by Troy and a guy called Shard Morrison, also a great songwriter. And he saw me play one time and he kind of said, "Hey, you got some good songs. do you want to write with some other people? And, so it was purely on the merit of the songs, which I really liked. So he said, well, I have this girl who's an excellent songwriter, and she just moved to Nashville. Now, this is before Tennille Townes was winning all these awards and writing with Daniel Tashian, who, won like 5 Grammys with Casey Musgraves. So I said, yeah, sure. Like, let's do that. So we wrote, I think, maybe 2 or 3 songs together. And one of them is the song Run, which is on the second Penny Auction album. And it was an eye opener because, she's younger than me, but when we had this session, it's something I've learned with working with artists who are really, really good. And when they sing and when they write and they do something in a session where you just kind of know that they're a level above. Well, Tennille was like that, only she was probably 4 or 5 levels above. It was just like, wow, this person can sing and write. So I wrote a few songs with her, and that was maybe my second or third co-write, I think, ever. And then, of course, she went on to get signed to Big Yellow Dog, and she got signed by, I forget what the major label is there in Nashville, and she's since won a bunch of awards. She's got cuts on the Lady A album. I think it's maybe Lady A album. Maybe don't quote me on that, but she's definitely been moving up for sure.
Yeah. So you wrote. Now let's talk about. You wrote "Waiting Kind of Girl" with Leaving Thomas, and that reached number 4 on the Canadian Billboard in 2017, man.
Well, that went to 34 on the country Billboard. And so that was another, Troy hooked me up with Leaving Thomas. I wrote another, I'd say 3 or 4 songs with them. That was very much their song that they brought me into. And I did more of the finishing off, mainly contributing to the bridge there, and tried a bit to have another crack at the chorus or something, if I remember correctly. But that was, they did a really good job on that song too. And it was my first time ever getting on a chart, and I thought it was really cool. And they were really good duo, but they're not together anymore. So.
Well, we're good for you, man. That's, songwriting is something to be very proud of when somebody records something and it does well and gets on Billboard charts. So good for you. Congratulations on that. But let's talk about Haley Jensen. I mean, this is something.
Yeah. So that was, as you can tell, the theme here is Troy Kokol, who again is just, if it wasn't for Troy, I probably would have I told him this too. I probably would have sold my recording gear and put the guitar in the crawl space years ago, but he's been really good. He just called me up one day, and it was during Calgary Stampede. I think it was the night before I was flying back to Toronto to spend some time with the family in Ontario. And he said, hey, do you want to write with, there's an Australian artist in, and she's playing Calgary Stampede, and she's doing a couple co-writes. Would you want to come in and write? And I said, well, of course. So I said, yep. And then I went over the next day, or actually that night I sort of said, well, the way I do things is I like to have something in my back pocket for a writing session in case nothing happens or nothing is happening, because I want to make sure that the song is good. So at least if there's a starting point that I bring in, then maybe it'll end up being something. So I sort of said, okay, well, what kind of songs are you listening to? And, what kind of vibe are you looking for? And so she had mentioned a few songs. I think she has a playlist on Spotify that's, songs that inspired Breaking Heart. So you can kind of see some of the songs. So I came down to the little studio here, and I mocked up a little demo of verse and a chorus. And the chorus part is actually kind of funny because that chorus was pretty much intact from what I did. But the first lines of the chorus are, I don't know where to start. And that was because I literally didn't know what I was going to sing when I was singing the melody. So I brought that in the next day, and she really gravitated towards it. And I didn't think it was all that great. And then I heard her sing it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Haley, if you look her up, she was on The Voice in Australia, and she was on an Australian Idol. So she is an absolute phenomenal singer. It's just,
yes, indeed.
It's next level. And when you're in a room with her, you hear it, and you're just like, okay, I get the feeling you could sing a nursery rhyme and it would get on a chart. Like, this is pretty unbelievable. So she really liked that chorus. And then Troy kind of came up with this he changed the vibe entirely and came up with this amazing verse bit. And it kind of went from there. We just threw in lines and threw in arrangement stuff. But that vibe and that initial kind of banjo thing was Troy. And it was a really, really excellent co-write, and we really came up with that. And when it was done, I was actually quite impressed because I didn't think it was much when I brought it in. And then nothing happened for about a year or two. So,
yeah.
So
you thought it was gone.
Well, how these things work is, you write all these songs, and then you kind of hope that the artist likes yours enough to cut it. And then if they cut it, then you hope that they like it good enough to make it a single. So then it eventually got the sort of call like, hey, this Haley's probably going to make this a single, and I'm going to. And Troy was producing it, and his production on it is very impressive. To me, it's pretty jaw dropping. So my family had actually gone to Europe, so I was kind of kicking around Calgary by myself in whatever the summer. I think it was last summer, or it was summer before. It's summer before. And Troy said, "Hey, I said, "Hey, can I come over and see what you're doing?" So I sort of sat there, and he started producing it, and it was very apparent that it was going to sound really, really good. When he recorded the banjo, I hit spacebar on Pro Tools, so I always say I'm a second engineer to it. And then he would send me bits and pieces as he kind of progressed along with it, and then when he sent me the final, and then it got mixed by a guy called Jordan in Nashville, and it got mastered by Piper Payne, also in Nashville, who's an outstanding mastering engineer. Wow. And when I got that master back, I was like, this might have legs, actually. This might actually do something. And it did. So it did. Like,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Haley Jensen recorded it, and it was it hit number 2 on the Australian country charts in 2020, buddy.
Yeah, it just kept going up, and it hit the top 40, and I was thinking, this is amazing. And then it hit, it kept moving up, and then it hit the top 10, and I was kind of like, well, all right, that's awesome. Yeah. Now it's going to start going down again. And then it was top 5, and then it was 2, and it almost hit number 1 from what we understand. It was certainly the number 1 country artist, like Australian country artist. It was number 2. The number 1 song was an American artist. But it was the top Australian country artist at that point for number 2. I think it was September, October. So I was very, very impressed, and it did better than I thought it would do. That's for sure. And I was pleasantly surprised for sure.
Well, congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. Joe's email was, hey, what was the inspiration for Breaking Hearts? Was it a personal experience?
No. The chorus, like I say, I kind of had those lyrics just off the top of my head, and then we kind of based the lyrics around that. And I think Troy came up with the Boy You're Cold, Stone Cold, and that was a really good cadence and a really good series of rhymes. I just thought that was amazing. And we kind of just built it off of that idea. Okay, she kind of pictured a guy who thinks he's very special, but he just keeps breaking girls' hearts. So there's that line in the song I really like, I wonder how you sleep at night with the light of your halo burning so damn bright, which is, this kind of backhanded, insult, I guess.
Absolutely. And Breaking Hearts, folks, check out Haley Jensen online, Breaking Hearts, co-written by our guest tonight, Chris O'Neill. Now, it says that 2021 is looking busy for you to do as well. Yep. Are you busy with another Haley Jensen single?
Sure am, yeah. She's got another
amazing,
song
good for you.
Another song called Just Gonna Party, which we wrote in the summertime. And we wrote it pretty specifically just about the political situation. Everywhere was going crazy. The pandemic was going crazy. And we've had this conversation about, I just want to crack a beer by a bonfire and forget all about it. So we kind of wrote the song about that. And that's coming out March 8th, I believe. And that's going to be on Canadian and Australian radio. So hopefully that can follow in the footsteps of Breaking Hearts and Fireworks, which is her second single that she released, which was also awesome. Not co-written by me, but an excellent, excellent song.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, congratulations on the co-writing on these songs that are getting on the Billboard charts. That's very impressive. Chris, I want to ask you what your creative writing process is. I know for me, I would come up with a riff on a guitar, record it on my phone, maybe put it away. I probably have 100 of them on there by now. Put it away, come back to it maybe a couple of weeks later, check out the 3 or 4 or 5 I have on my phone. If I like them, turn them into a song. What is your creative writing process?
Yeah, it's probably pretty similar to yours. I have a feeling, I shouldn't say I have a feeling, I can't imagine how I don't really annoy my wife when I'm sitting around the dinner table and an idea pops into my head or something, and I have to get up and run to another room, pull out the phone, grab the guitar. I got to get this down real quick before I forget. And then a lot of them go nowhere. As you know, if you're writing songs, the vast majority of the songs you write will either, if they get finished, they won't go anywhere, or you won't record them, or you won't like them after a while. But I'm a big fan of just trying to, whatever I feel I think is going to be strong, I kind of want to run with that. And I try to keep the first thought best thought. So I don't know if you do this, but I largely just strum something on the guitar or piano, and then I mumble something into the phone, and whatever that mumble kind of sounds like lyrically, I'll usually gravitate towards that. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I've gotten better at, I think, over the years through the Calgary Songsmith is the editing process. One of the things when I listen to some of those early songs, those early penny auction songs, or even the early stuff that I did, editing really wasn't in my vocabulary at that point. So I listened back to it, and there's just so many things I could have and should have fixed with a bit of editing. So the best thought is the start, and then I really try to refine lyrics now, where I'm taking my time with it. And I really learned that also through a band that I produced called the Wild Elms. And these guys take forever to do stuff, but when it's done, it's really, really good. And it's the way they want it to be. So I think once I get that first thought, best thought, I really try to get the structure of the song done. And my rule is if the song doesn't have a good chorus, then I won't write it. So I'll just tuck it away somewhere. But if I have a good chorus and the chorus lyrics are done, then I can write around that. And then the rest of it is just craft. It's just songcraft, right? You want to make sure that you're, mm-hmm. depending on what kind of song you're going to write. I mean, if you're writing a single, the key, it's always changing, but you really want to follow a couple guidelines where you want to make sure you're making the listener interested every 8 bars. You want to make sure that your lyrics they make sense from a narrative standpoint. You want to make sure that melodically your verse isn't higher than your chorus in most cases. So you just kind of follow a bit of a template, and then I want to make sure that when I edit it, that it flows nicely. And that part of that process is playing it to other people and saying, like, I don't want you to tell me that this is great. I want you to do your worst and tell me what needs to be fixed about it. Right. So, I mean, I found something from I took a songwriting course, online course from Ryan Tedder, who's in One Republic, and he's written for like Adele and Taylor Swift and all these amazing artists. So one of the exercises, you had to write your own song, and I played it for my wife, and she's like, yeah, it's good. And I was like, okay, well, what's wrong with it? And then she sort of said, well, the verse needs to have more energy or something like that. And I was like, exactly. I knew something was wrong with it, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So you do need other people's perspectives, and not just musicians. I do find that if it's just a regular listener, I think that's usually your best bet, because they're the people who will hear the song and won't be focused on, oh, you know, if you went to a major 7th there, it might sound better.
Right. And not only that, the wife is always right, bud.
Well, so I've learned.
I've been married for 20 years. The wife is always right. There you go. But I want to ask you how you came up with the name, which I think is a fabulous name for a band or a person or whoever you perceive this, the penny auction. Where did that come from?
It's a good question. So it refers, from what I understand, from what I've read anyway, to in the Great Depression, there were these farms, you know, they would go out of business. If the farm can go out of business due to the drought. So the bank would foreclose on a farm, and then they would auction off the property. Well, rather than let their neighbor lose his farm, they would just lowball the bid, from what I understand. So the auction would be that, you know, you would buy that person's farm for pennies, and essentially keep it with the person. I think, like, I could be wrong here, but that's sort of what I remembered. And I thought, oh, that's a kind of a cool name. And it doesn't really lend itself to any particular genre either, right? Like, it's not, it could be a punk band, it could be a pop band, it could be a solo artist, you know.
Absolutely. And so I have an email. Let me just double check here. I have an email from Alexis, and Alexis asks, she's asking us something for a change. Instead of us asking, hey, Alexis, play the penny auction. I'm just trying to be funny, humor. You know, I'm a bad comedian, but anyway, Alexis asks, what does she ask here? Let me see. Back to the email. Oh, sounding good in Colorado. Hello, sounding great here in Boulder, Colorado. I'm interested in your guest music. So why don't we tell the folks where they can find your stuff or purchase some of your songs, Chris?
Any of the music platforms. The song that you heard tonight I released it under the name The Penny Auction. And you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, wherever. And then what I've been releasing music on, I released a song last week, and I'm releasing one this week, and an EP in March, just under my full name, Christopher O'Neill. So feel free to stream it and share it. That would be awesome.
And folks, let me tell you, you won't be disappointed. This is amazing music and great songwriting. Again, I just can't say it enough. Why don't we go ahead and play another song for the folks out there who are listening, Chris?
That would be great, yeah.
Yeah, so and then we'll come back and talk about it. Folks, I have Chris O'Neill on this House of Musicians radio show tonight. Fabulous singer, songwriter. Go check out his stuff. I'm trying to promote him as much as possible because personally I think he's great. This is a song that Chris wrote called Rosalie, right here on this House of Musicians on Reality Radio 101.
Train out my window. It's the last one down the line. I'm at the bottom of the bottle. Yeah, I think it's time. Yeah, I think it's time. So I will try to get some sleep, oh my darling Rosalie. But you haunt me in my dreams, like those shadows in the trees, like those shadows in the trees. You still haunt me, Rosalie. My Rosalie. I always thought I'd have tomorrow to atone for all my sins. I had a heart I'd let you borrow, but I'd never let you in, and never let you in. So I will try to get some sleep, oh my darling Rosalie. But you haunt me in my dreams, like those shadows in the trees, like those shadows in the trees. Whisper in the moonlight in the winter, you just won't let me be. So I will try to get some sleep, oh my darling Rosalie. But you haunt me in my dreams, like those shadows in the trees. I will try to get some sleep, oh my darling Rosalie. But you haunt me in my dreams, like those shadows in the trees, like those shadows in the trees. Now they're whispering to me, 'cause you still haunt me, Rosalie. My Rosalie.
Hey, welcome back, great listeners. We have Chris O'Neill on the show, fabulous singer-songwriter out west here in Canada. Chris, what an amazing song Rosalie is. It's my style of music. It's that kind of folky style of music. I'm not sure which song. I think you were saying that, excuse me, you were inspired by Blue Rodeo with the last call, but I heard some Blue Rodeo huge in Rosalie. Let's talk about where that song came from, my friend.
Sure. That is the one that was inspired by Blue Rodeo for sure. That was the 5 Days in July inspiration, definitely. So that song came from, I had a writing session booked with Troy and another artist, and it got canceled. So like I said before, like I always try to have something that I would bring in, and if nothing's happening, I can say, well, what about this? So I started that song, and well, you would know. So the initial name was like Anna Lee, but you know the song "The Wait" by the band. So yep. I was like, well, I can't throw Anna Lee in there because that's The Wait. So
right.
I was like, well, I need a name. It's kind of like Anna Lee, like Anna Lee's. And then it just popped up, Rosalie. And I was like, oh, that'll actually work. All right. So I don't know anybody named Rosalie or anything like that. So I just kind of wrote it around that. I wouldn't say that there's any deep personal meaning for it like on Last Call. I just think that I hit the vibe that I was looking for. It's just a, strumming on the front porch type of song. And that's not available yet. You guys played it first. So it'll be out. From what I know, from what my email says, it's going to be out on all those platforms on Friday. So,
well, we're honored to have it played first on our show. Absolutely honored. Again, what a fabulous song. Excuse me. Carry on.
Well, no, I said, well, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for playing it. So that's always
no problem. Now, how many? I know for me, some songs just come out of nowhere. They have no meaning, but at least 90% of what I write has to do with my friends, my writing group, my writing friends, or my family. How about you? How much of the music that you write comes from personal stuff?
Some of it will be very deliberately personal, and then some of it will be metaphorically, and sometimes, there's just a couple lines in it. I think most of the time there's a couple lines in it that are personal, but then you have to kind of make it a bit more of a story, because if it was just super personal, then you'd be really writing about the minutia of everyday life, which, is okay in some cases. There's, song Cars, I guess, you could throw into that category maybe, but yeah, just the idea of I couldn't write about traffic and going to work and all those kind of things every day. There has to be some sort of embellishment. Plus, it really helps when you write with artists, because when you do co-writing sessions, you have to remember that it's the artist's song, right? Like they're the ones who are going to write it. So I have never owned a pickup truck, but if I sat down with a country artist and they said, I want to write a song about driving my pickup truck into the ocean or something like that, I'd say, okay, let's get into that character and let's do that, because it's all about the artist. So I think it's a good practice to have that happen. But when it's my own stuff, there's usually a couple lines in there that are personal, some more than others. And then there's the odd one that is just a straight up story, right? Like, I mean, Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison Blues is not a personal story. So it's allowed, I think.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you haven't done extensive touring or anything, but I do like to ask each and every guest, tell me something crazy that's happened music-wise, maybe somebody famous that you've met, or maybe something that's happened when you're over in Australia. And I know you know some famous people like Haley Jensen and Tennille Towns and Leaving Thomas, that band. I know you know some famous people, but do you have a crazy story for me?
Well, I don't know about crazy stories. So the last band I was in was called The Story, and we used to play around Toronto. And there's just my childhood buddies in there: Jeff Yantomasi, John Fitzpatrick, Matt Ibbett, Pete Asen, and myself. And it was just really fun. But I do remember it's not a crazy story, but it's a story that I think anybody in a band can relate to. And I do remember we played the Elma Combo one night.
Amazing.
So wait for the story though.
Well, okay. I was going to say, what a legendary place, and now it's back open. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, I just told myself that I played the same place Mick Jagger has, but this wasn't the case. So we get our stuff in the van, and we make I think a couple guys live in Toronto, and then I think 2 or 3 of us were coming in from Oshawa at the time. So we go in, and then it just starts snowing. We're like, all right, this might not work out so well. So we ended up at the Elma Combo. We set our gear up, and honestly, I think it was the opening band, I think, played, one of the bands played, and then they left. So I remember playing to an empty Elma Combo, with the exception of, like, even our friends didn't come. It was that bad. It was like, I think a couple of our girlfriends or something were there. I mean, you could hear the bartender squeaking the glasses behind the bar. And then, but you play your set, and then you leave. But I will tell one, not a crazy story, a story that I think was really good about Australia. I just thought of it. And I went to Australia for school, and there was a lot of other Canadians down there. And I was playing in this bar, and I wish I could remember the name of the bar, but it was really close to the ocean. And there's a bunch of Canadians, and we'd all been there for, I think, 7 or 8 months or something like that. And so I played a set. I played a lot of covers, and then the last song I played of the evening was "Wheat Kings" by the Tragically Hip. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those times where you always hope for this as an artist when you play somewhere, that because most of the time when you play as an acoustic artist, you're just background noise and people are talking over each other. You're just there, and that's fine. But this was one of those things you hope for, where the bar just goes dead quiet, and you could hear a pin drop, and everybody's listening to the song, and everybody knows it. And it was just that really good connection and it wasn't my song, obviously, but, it was the combination of Late at Night by the Beach, acoustic song, and everybody missing home, and that Wheat Kings kind of, all the Canadianisms in there. It's just, I thought that was one that really stands out, especially about Australia.
Absolutely. And speaking of Australia, we just got an email. Hey to you, how's the Australia radio play going? I love their radio stations. So maybe he's referring to Haley Jensen. What's the update on that? Do you know what spot the song is in, or?
Well, they just released it to radio literally a couple of days ago, so I'm not really sure. Again, I wish I knew more about that side of things. They just kind of tell me, right? And I just, oh, great.
Sure.
But Australian radio is a lot like what you're doing, and they are really, really good at championing their own artists, and they're really good at just, promoting Australian music. And even when I was down there, when I was down there, the first week I was in Australia, I went into, back then they still had CD stores. It was right at the end of those, or record stores. So I walked up to the guy at the counter and I said, hey, what's some good Australian music? And he said, well, there's this guy, do you know the band Powderfinger? And I said, yeah. Mm-hmm. I know that song, My Happiness. And he said, well, the guy in Powderfinger's name is Bernard Fanning. You should really check out this album, Tea and Sympathy. And if you like that song, Rosalie, you should really check out the album Tea and Sympathy by Bernard Fanning, because it is unbelievable. It's one of my favorite albums ever. And it's all because the guy kind of told me, check out Bernard Fanning. And I guess the best comparison I can make between Powderfinger is probably the Tragically Hip, where Powderfinger and Bernard Fanning are massive in Australia, and rightfully so. But, not so big outside of Australia, but it's because of those Aussie radio stations and that Aussie just that spirit of getting behind their artists, that they're able to survive and they're able to promote it. And it's great to see.
Absolutely. You know what, Chris? What can I say, man? I'm going to keep following. It's been an honor to have you on the show. I'm going to keep following your progress. As soon as you have new material come out, please text me. Let me know so I can promote it in this House of Musicians Facebook group. Folks, be sure and go join this House of Musicians Facebook group because we have many popular artists in that group, and you can follow guest to guest weekly from my show. Chris O'Neill, man, what a pleasure to have you. Again, you're the son of Mike O'Neill, famous rock star from the band Wednesday, who we had on the show. So he's definitely, I'm sure he's very proud of what you're doing, and I look forward to following your progress, Chris. Thank you for being on the show kindly, and like I say, just as soon as you have some new material released, let me know because I want to continue to promote you. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And if I could just give a shout out to my dad and my mom and my sister and my brother-in-law and my nieces and everybody else back in Ontario. I really miss you guys, and I can't wait to see you.
There you go. Well, again, it's been an absolute honor to have you on the show. And to the listener, I say, thank you for being here. Excuse me. Always dance and sing. Let the music bring your soul to the surface for all the world to see. Until next time, have a shuffle your feet kind of week, and good night. You've been listening to this House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101.